thank you. I'm Dan Glickman, Director of the Institute of Politics, and I want to thank everybody for coming to the forum on this beautiful winter evening here in Boston. Many folks of my generation certainly went to school and college in the 60s, often wonder why students are not as passionate about political issues as perhaps we once were. And there may be some good reasons for that. I know that times have changed, but I have often said, perhaps not 100% seriously, but I've said this even before Congressman Rangel has become the leading spokesman, that one of the things that a surefire way to get students passionate again would be to get them all into military service. And of course, that is what Charlie Rangel is talking about today and has made a very significant contribution to our public debate about it. Tonight we bring you one of the most distinguished speakers that I have ever heard speak, and a former colleague of mine in the United States Congress. His views are not only provocative but extraordinarily timely, given the fact that a war may be imminent. We at the Institute of Politics have done some polling among 18 to 24-year-olds nationwide, and our data is interesting. While 90% of the students report that they are very or somewhat patriotic, 67% of those surveyed said they were opposed to the reinstatement of the draft. The issue of the draft has that effect on many people. In the 60s, the draft forced many students at Harvard and their parents to seriously think about whether the war in Vietnam was a just cause or not. The draft and the war in Vietnam forced students to question authority. They held teach-ins, sit-ins. 200 students even took over University Hall here at Harvard. So tonight our guest has a message many of you may not want to hear, and that's what makes this place and this forum very interesting. He thinks we need to bring back the draft, and he has unique credibility to speak on this issue, primarily because he is one of the most decorated veterans serving in the United States Congress. He served in the U.S. Army in the all-black 503rd Field Artillery Battalion from 1948 to 1952. He was awarded the Purple Heart and Bronze Star for leading several dozen men to safety after the infamous Chinese Army's attack across the Yalu River, an attack that left 90% of his unit killed or wounded. After his military service, he graduated from New York University and St. John's University School of Law, after which he spent his entire career in public service, first as an assistant U.S. attorney in New York, and later as an elected member of the New York State Assembly. His current support of the draft is tempered not only by his military service, but by his service as general counsel to President Johnson's National Advisory Commission on Selective Service in 1966 and 1967. He was elected as a member of the United States House of Representatives from the state of New York in 1970 and has served continuously for 32 and a half years. Aside from his role on the House Judiciary Committee during the hearings on the articles of impeachment of President Nixon, he has extraordinary legislative accomplishments on a myriad of different issues. And one of the things he's best known for is his work to end apartheid in South Africa. He is, of course, the ranking Democrat on the very powerful House Ways and Means Committee. I am pleased to introduce you tonight my friend, the Dean of the New York Congressional Delegation, the ranking member of the House Ways and Means Committee, and a great American, the Honorable Charles Rangel.
Thank you. It's clear that my office sent you a piece of our pre-campaign literature for an introduction. Pretty good. I am so pleased to join the list of illustrious speakers that have been invited here to Harvard. And I am not here to really encourage you to become a part of the military or to try to sell that argument to you. I'm really here mainly to dispel a lot of things that people have said that I'm not all about. There's no way for me to believe that people here at Harvard or any place in America are less patriotic than I am about a country that has offered so much opportunity for so many people. For those of you that have had the opportunity to travel outside of the United States, you recognize it more and more that with all of the problems that we have here, no nation offers more opportunity for more people than the United States of America. And I particularly can hardly believe, and neither can most Republicans, that I could have started from Harlem as a high school dropout and end up as a member of the United States Congress serving on the Ways and Means Committee. It is a tremendous honor, an opportunity for me. And if I thought that anybody or any country would jeopardize our great country in such a way that these opportunities could be denied to others, then taking a preemptive strike and wiping them out once and for all, to me, would not be an option. It would be something that has to be done. What I have been concerned with, however, is that the question of war has to be understood, if not personally, then by at least reference historically to sacrifice. We cannot have an administration that can concentrate on reducing our national budget and talk about shared sacrifice at a time that we're asking young men and women to attack a nation in a preemptive strike without any evidence at all being submitted that this country was involved in the attack on the United States of America. That we are asking, and when I say we, I'm talking about people are demanding that we take this demon out, that we send our troops over there, that we teach them a lesson. And yet, with all of this patriotism, there doesn't seem to me an interest in asking who will be doing the fighting, who will be doing the dying, who would be doing the sacrificing. And the statistical data would show that in our United States Congress, they can't find but one member that has a kid in the enlisted ranks in the service, and probably less than a half a dozen that has someone as an officer. I don't believe that everyone has to be a veteran, but when you talk about war, you have to talk to me about sacrifice. Now, a lot of criticisms have been made of me saying, Rangel really doesn't believe in shared sacrifice. He wants to embarrass the president. He wants to stop the war. He really believes that this is a race issue. He's engaged in class warfare. Well, I think half of that is true. I do believe that no matter what we're talking about, if it's going to cause us pain, we'll take a deep breath and decide what is it that we're doing. I didn't just come upon this idea. I would talk with the supporters of the war, and they would be critical of me for not supporting the president, not saying we should strike first, saying it's taken too long, Saddam Hussein is just playing games with us. And I asked them the question, would your enthusiasm for this preemptive strike against Iraq be the same if it was your kid that was being placed in harm's way? If it was your grandkid that you're talking about? None of them had said, yes, I would ask my kid to volunteer to liberate Iraq. But if the mother was there, you can hurry up and believe they would say, hell no, his position would be different on the war in Iraq if we were talking about our kids and grandkids. Another issue is that this demon, Saddam Hussein, I don't need a distinguished American like Colin Powell to prove to me, as clearly he tried to prove to the United Nations, that we're dealing with a bum, that he lies, that he's a cheat, and that he was moving weapons around or moving something around in trying to avoid detection. My problem is several in that. First of all, if we know where the weapons are and what he's moving around, if we see the tire tracks from one place to the other, if we have this information, and believe me, the House and the Senate, we don't have it. And we didn't get it in the State of the Union. We just heard that the Secretary of State had it, and he would share it publicly with the nation and the world. But if we do have it, for God's sake, why can't we share it with the inspectors? Why can't we tell them where it is? We know you can't find it. You know? And if this demon is spending so much time with an army that we believe is really not supporting him, in a country that wants to be liberated, why don't we send more inspectors there and let him spend all of his time moving stuff around so he can't hurt anybody? Because if we really are concerned with weapons of mass destruction, Mr. President, we got some people in North Korea that are telling you that, one, they got weapons of mass destruction, two, you can't get in, and three, we are pursuing a diplomatic solution by going to China, going to Russia, and trying to put economic sanctions and do whatever is necessary. Why? Because these nations are not just threats to the United States in the long term. If we get rid of one, it doesn't mean we're getting rid of the others. And if we really just had a hit list for who's evil, how Saudi Arabia missed the list, with the exception of oil, I don't know. But the truth of the matter is that we don't have many friends besides Israel in that part of the world. And so God forbid if we start saying that the United States of America has to preemptively strike and bomb any nation if we believe that they're evil, without giving us evidence of what to do. And why? Well, because it is immoral. How many lives would have to be lost in a preemptive strike in bombing Iraq? And at the end of the day, would we feel any more safe that we had done him in and hopefully done a better job than we're doing with Osama bin Laden? And if indeed we took the preemptive strike because we just feel that we are endangered, do we lose the moral authority to deal with the question of Pakistan and India if either one of them feel that they're endangered? Or if the North Koreans feel that they're going to be struck by the South Koreans? Or if indeed it is an international problem, doesn't it demand an international solution? So for all of these reasons and many, many more, because most of this is supposed to be me listening and trying to answer your question, addressing your concern, but it just seems to me that if we were talking about a mandatory service where everyone would be eligible for the military between 18 and 26, men and women, and everyone will be called to serve their nation, only a fraction of those that will be called will have to serve in the military, because only a fraction of the military needs would be our young men and women. But whether we attack Iraq or not, we are at war with terrorists. Our people are needed, whether they're my age at 73 or your age as youngsters. All of us has to feel a sense of responsibility, and the question should be asked, what can we do? And not everyone can do the same thing. But after we fulfill the military aspect of the draft legislation I have, we are talking about asking our young people to serve this great nation at our airports and our seaports, in our hospitals, in our schools, on our borders, to be of assistance, to know that during this time we need each other. And nobody's going to tell you, whether you go into the military screaming and scratching and demanding that you want to be excluded, that at the end of the day you feel better as a person, you feel better as an American, and anyone that will talk with you would know that you would have a better understanding of the diversity that exists in our country and those people who are willing to serve. And so if they're saying that I'm only doing this to show my opposition to the war. That's not so. If we do, in fact, have to go to war, this will be needed even more than that. For those who say I'm raising the race issue, that's difficult to respond because you can't say yes or no. Am I raising the class issue? You bet your life I am. Am I saying that the affluent and those that are hooked up politically are excluded from serving? You bet your life. But am I saying, too, that it's not my fault that blacks and minorities are overwhelmingly in the lower and the moderate income income levels? And so, therefore, when the incentives are to pay people to join the military, people who don't find better opportunities, what? They join the military. Some people say, well, then they want to fight. No. They're prepared to fight, but they don't look for a fight. And the racial question, I think, has been shattered by my friend and partner in this legislation, Senator Fritz Hollings from South Carolina, that says several things. One, it's not just the military that carries too much of the sacrifice. It's his people, his poor rural people, that find themselves without job opportunity, that find themselves in the military, and that finds this country is leaning on them to sacrifice more than the rest of the country. But he also includes in that number the people that are in the reservists, because he comes from a state that has more military installations than most, and therefore there's a tendency for people who are discharged to retire next to the military installation of their last assignment and to join the National Guard and to join the reserves, and they're being called upon each and every month to shore up the active members that we have in our armed forces. One of the reasons why you hear so many of the people in the Pentagon saying that we have to attack now is because if we bring back our combat-ready troops that are already in the Middle East, that are prepared to attack, and bring them back to the United States, we don't have a similar number of troops that are similarly situated to go back overseas, which means what? We are now exhausting our active military to such an extent that Secretary Rumsfeld has already extended by 1 year the enlistment period for those who volunteered. And what is happening with our National Guard and reservists is exhausting the structure not only of the families, many of whom are on food stamps, others that are calling out for help from the federal government, but it is also exhausting our police departments and our fire departments, where many people in the reserves actually have as their jobs. And so, if we cannot avoid this war, and God, I pray every night that we can, we still are going to have to be ready to serve in our national service one way or the other. And it seems to me that this is the most equitable way for us to be able to fulfill this national responsibility. I have heard criticism that, well, the military really, they don't want draftees to serve with them. That's poppycock. When anyone is fighting, they don't ask how you got there. They don't ask you whether you're a draftee or whether you're regular. They want to know what I want to know. How the hell we got to get out of this mess? How can we help each other? And how can we defend the flag? We've had other people who've said that Rangel really doesn't get it. This is Caspar Weinberg. I always believe that sometimes when you get older you lose it, and I'm afraid to say that, but Caspar said Rangel doesn't get it. It's just that blacks are more patriotic than white folks are. You know. Of course, Rumsfeld said something like, we lose so much money on draftees. They never really provided their worth while they were in the service. And then someone gave him his medication. He said, I didn't mean what I said. I just meant that they left the military with so much training that it was waste on them. And then someone said, stop explaining, Mr. Secretary, we'll get by this. But I do hope that others have said, well, you don't expect the legislation to go anywhere. Well, they said that they didn't expect that apartheid would stop in South Africa, or that we ever would get the Voting Rights Act, or that we would end segregation. But I say that legislation is nothing, as Dan knows, that you put in today and you say it's going to be signed into law tomorrow. Legislation is something to talk about, something to discuss, something that people take back home. But ultimately, if we don't have this legislation, we're going to have to come up with something. I don't believe anybody here from Harvard or from Howard would want to believe that we're going to continue to try to build up our military by giving money incentives. I don't think we want to believe that it's the kind of country that we take those who need the money to fight the wars and others don't have any sacrifices to make. In any event, the legislation has really caused an excitement review of who fights our wars, the unfairness of the sacrifice, and me truly believing, as I started, that this great country of ours that offers so much opportunity to so many, that for those who have reached a point that we must go to war, they can only reach that decision because they believe that we are endangered, that someone has put us in imminent danger. And if they believe that, I want to hear who believes that and doesn't believe that they have to make sacrifices in support of that decision. I believe that with my whole heart and my very being. And if I'm wrong, I thank God that I'm in the House of Representatives, a member of Congress, where it can be debated and the American people can speak. In conclusion, I would say this too. One of the biggest struggles that I have been involved in is removing the voting age from 21 to 18. I truly believed that if older, inexperienced people in the Congress were supposed to declare the wars and say that 18 years old will be there to fight, that they should be able to vote. What a disappointment, because they have decided really not to participate. So maybe with the draft legislation, it would be an automatic registration so that you'll be able to express yourself, late though it may be, in saying that the Congress should be listening to all of our citizens. Because as we talk about going to war with the first president that's been appointed by the United States Supreme Court, that we have to recognize that less than 1/2 of those Americans that were eligible to vote voted, and less than 1/2 of those voted for this president. This doesn't mean that he's not our only president and this person that we have to support. It does mean that we do have to think seriously about people who want to fight, people who want peace, people who want to improve the economy, people who want to be critical. Please be registered, and please vote, and please let it be known that you're concerned. Now that I got your attention, I'm prepared to take questions.
We have a man with some convictions here. Now let's see if we've got some participants with some convictions. What we're going to do is I'd like people to introduce themselves and where they go to school here, where they're from in the community. Try to keep your question very short if you can, and we'll get to as many questions as we can. So we'll start over here. Joe.
Hi, my name is Joe Green. I'm a sophomore at the college from Santa Monica, California. And my question is, if the goal is equity, would you prefer that we take draftees before those who would voluntarily enlist in order to have more of the Army be draftees and a more kind of representative body of our population? And the second part of the question is...
Let me answer the first part.
Okay,
No.
okay.
Everybody goes, and just because someone volunteered and they like it and they want to make a career out of it, that shouldn't have anything to do with the shared sacrifice of everyone being there.
And my second part was, are you in favor of everybody serving in the Army?
Thought I made that clear. Everybody, men and women, not necessarily in the Army, but to be eligible and not to be excluded from serving in the Army. But if the Army has fulfilled their needs, then we serve some other place.
No, I mean like in Israel. Like, everybody has to serve.
I don't mean like in Israel. I mean like in the United States of America. Everyone has to serve.
Okay. This gentleman right here.
Hello, Congressman. My name is Stan Byers. I'm an alumni of the Kennedy School. If I'm not mistaken, when you went into the military, you chose to go in and were not drafted. Could you talk a little bit about why you chose to go in and why you think that a draft is needed now, and why people that need to make that choice now wouldn't make the same decision that you did?
You weren't here for the whole talk. Listen, my brother enlisted in June of 1941, before Pearl Harbor. I enlisted in September 1948. I dropped out of high school. As a matter of fact, the more people asked me the question, the more I thought I was beating the draft. In 1948, Truman said you could join for 1 year, and then you wouldn't be drafted, but you'd be in reserve for 6 years. Well, I was in for 3 months. And I looked so good in uniform. And I got more self-esteem than I needed. And I re-enlisted. Now, I didn't re-enlist to go to Korea, and I had no problems with North Koreans, much less of a problem with Chinese. But, I mean, I was not a patriot. But when they sent me overseas, I went overseas, and we had a lot of draftees that were overseas, too. As a matter of fact, a lot of reservists that took the 1 year was there. I don't really believe that because people choose the military, that it means that they truly believe that they're the only ones that should make the sacrifice. And so I come here to ask the question, just because some people want to be professional, why should not the protection of this country, as the nation sees it, be shared by everyone in the country? Why don't you tell me what I'm missing?
This gentleman right up here.
Sir, my name is Bill McCamley. I'm a second-year public policy student from Las Cruces, New Mexico. My question is that during the Vietnam War, there were many people all around the country who were in positions of power, positions of having a lot of money in their family, including our president, who got out of being drafted by getting into the National Guard or got into other non-active units. If the draft were instituted today, how would you see the organization of the draft boards or whatever so that everyone would have to serve and so that people wouldn't be excluded like they were before?
As Dan Glickman said, I was counsel to President Johnson when he was struggling with the draft. And the reason he caught so much hell was because he included college kids and then tried to exclude them, and it separated the nation. When you say that it's a universal system without exclusions, when people don't feel like they're being put upon any more than anyone else, and especially when statistically they know how limited the possibility is that they actually got to be placed in harm's way, it's just a question, in my opinion, of equity and fairness, that everybody serves. This was not true in Vietnam. It was not true in Korea. And to the extent that people were excluded during World War II, it was more equitable then because everyone was called. And so the only exclusions that I have is that I let a kid have a year and a half or something left to finish high school, but after that, everyone goes.
Yes, sir. My name is Herman Suit, and I'm at the Mass General and the Medical School. One, I would like to say I very much enjoyed your presentation, and I think you've made a strong case that this administration has not made a convincing case for our going to war at this time. And in addition, they seem to go out of their way to provoke a terrorist attack against the United States. And I would like to ask if you think there would be merit in a change of Rumsfeld Department from the Department of Defense to the Department for War.
I don't want to get involved in that part of the discussion. But I have to say one thing. I come from a rough neighborhood in Harlem. And if you really believe that there are people out there that want to hurt you, you don't start off by insulting them. You don't call them funny little pygmies. You don't call them evil. And for God's sake, if you're dealing with people in lesser developed countries that really don't know the luxuries that we take for granted in this country, and the only thing they got is their religion, you don't insult their religious beliefs. You don't do that. We are a fortunate country. Unfortunately, we are a young country. We understand Judaism, we understand Christianity, and we have stopped trying to understand that there are other people that have the same deep beliefs in their religion as we do in ours. And we have some people that have made outrageous statements against people who love Americans but really don't understand us as we don't understand them. And if we strike Iraq, and if they in retaliation, since they can't reach us, strike our friends in Israel, and if our friends in Israel have no opportunities to do anything except to retaliate with all the force that she has for two reasons. One, because she fears survival for a lot of reasons, increase in Arab population, surrounded by enemies. But two, politically, she has to show strength. Somebody tells me why this is not going to be interpreted in the region as Christians and Jews against Muslims. And as we go about Americans' businesses all over the world, we would not be black and white. We will not be Jew and Gentile. We will be Americans, subjected to the hostilities that people would build in believing that we're against Muhammad. You don't say these mean-spirited things to people unless you are sensitive to them. Dan, someone once told me a story that I tell over and over and over again because it has me to have a better understanding of other people. It's about these two old men. And one asked the other, "Do you love me?" And the old man says, "I've known you for 50 years. Why do you ask such a dumb question? Of course I love you." Then he says, "Do you know what hurts me?" He says, "How would I know what hurts you?" And he responded, "How could you possibly love me if you don't know what hurts me?" America doesn't know what hurts and offends so many other people. And we never try to sit down. And for me to hear the president just saying how sick and tired he is and that this is all trickery, I just wish that he was talking in an international circle of people who were committed for peace, I would feel more comfortable in fighting when I had to fight.
Thank you. Gentleman up there.
Evening, sir. My name is Derek Lewis. I'm first-year student at the Harvard Business School from Phoenix, Arizona. My question is this. I think in a pre-September 11th world that a preemptive strike, conventional wisdom probably would have been, don't do it, doesn't make sense, for all the reasons that you've listed tonight and more. How do you answer the charge that Colin Powell basically stated last week that, I mean, in a sense, when I listened to that speech, my understanding was that his view is essentially that things have changed and it's this post-September 11th world that in some way provides either some sort of moral or ethical support for taking a preemptive strike. So I'm just curious how you deal or reconcile that issue in your head when presented.
I have all the respect in the world for General Powell, but I'm a member of Congress. We declare war, and he acts and responds to it. So he may be just as sick and tired as the president is. What did he say that would allow you to believe that you can go to bed and sleep a little safer after we bomb senseless the people in Iraq? I don't know what it is. And why not, would the same argument not apply to North Korea? Why not send some people in there for who paid the people who came over here from Saudi Arabia? Why is they never made the list in the first place? I mean, does having oil keep you off the list? I don't know. I tell you one thing, 911 made me a better American in recognizing that I'm more of an American than I'm a Democrat. I'm more American than I'm a black American. And with all the problems we had with Pataki and Giuliani, that we came together as a city. When I went to Washington, hey, we were not just New Yorkers. We were Americans, and they sang God Bless America, and they knew we took the hit for our country. So those people in the administration, they came down, they took pictures, they were with the firemen and the policemen, but that doesn't mean that we have to go out every demon that they describe. This country should demand more before we say we're ready to go to war. That's my whole point. That's why I'm here.
Gentleman right here.
Sir, my name's Jim Cruzy. I'm a National Security Fellow at the Kennedy School. Last year, I was in command of a helicopter squadron that's today deployed to the Persian Gulf, and I'm the father of a daughter who's 20 and a son who's 18 who's registered for the Selective Service, and I share your concerns. I do feel that that shared sacrifice is important, and I think most people in the military feel that as well, that maybe that's not been the case. But my question to you is that as a CEO of a helicopter squadron that deployed on one of our aircraft carriers, fewer than 10% of the young men and women who came to work for me would have been useful had they been draftees. Most of the training tracks are far too long, and the IDTC, the interdeployment training cycle for a carrier in peacetime is 18 months, which would make it very difficult to train the individuals up to do the very dangerous and patriotic work that they do on the carriers. And I just can't quite operationalize what I would do with a large number of draftees that are serving a short tour with little training.
It just seems to me, what's your rank? Captain?
Commander.
Colonel? Commander? That's Navy.
Yes, sir.
That's equivalent to what, Colonel?
Lieutenant Colonel.
Lieutenant Colonel.
Yes, sir.
It just seems to me that if someone has a 2-year commitment and they need 3 years of training, that they won't be in your outfit.
Yes, sir. There's many outfits like that in the United States Navy, though. Very, very many.
Well, if somebody was to send someone who needed 3 years of training to your outfit undertrained, they should be court-martialed.
But they don't.
That's the problem with the administration. I mean, you are not saying that you're afraid that a 2-year-old can't be trained. I mean, a 2-year enlistee cannot be trained. I mean, who would have thought that a guy like me, as a high school dropout, could direct fire for 18 155 millimeter howitzers? They would have said, we don't want you. But you know something? They did. There's different things that different people can do. why, there may be a whole lot of people that, you attending Harvard? You're at the Kennedy
I'm
School?
a national security fellow here. Yes, sir.
Well, you look around, you probably find a whole lot of intelligent people be able to do that in less than 2 years. I mean, just because you have a high technical job doesn't mean that you need a career person to do it. That's when we, so, the job that you need probably would take someone who has more than a 2-year commitment. I agree with you. And if anyone makes these guys get there, you call your congressman or call me, and we say that's wrong.
Thank you. Let's see, this gentleman up there.
Hi, my name is John Gatman. I'm a senior here at the college. I'm originally from a small rural public high school in Alabama where we sent more students actually into the military than went to a 4-year or 2-year college. And the reason that they did this was because it was an excellent economic opportunity for them. It was the best job that they could get with the education they had. And I just wonder, Congressman, what are these people going to do? What job are they going to get now that they don't have a spot in the Army? Since there's a limited number of spots in the military at any given time. What job are they going to take now?
Your folks in rural Alabama deserve better than that.
It's not, as far as the benefits you get, it's...
They deserve better than
Where
that.
will they find it?
I would think that you should be engaged in how we should improve the economy to have better training and better job opportunities for your people in Alabama than to say that the only option is to join the military and to fight the wars. I would hope so.
My name is Barton, and I'm a registered voter here in the 8th Congressional District of Massachusetts. Presently, 18 to 26-year-old males are required to register with selective service, and females are not. Would you consider introducing legislation to require 18 to 26-year-old females to require registration with selective service?
Done that. That's in the bill. I've already introduced the bill. Senator Hollings has co-sponsored the bill. I'll say it again, 18 to 26 means everybody.
Gentleman right here.
Congressman Gregel, this mic's loud. My name's Chris. I'm a senior at the college. I'm from Seattle, Washington. I'm actually writing a senior thesis on Ivy League participation in the military, specifically the Harvard story, and it comes from a personal example. What would you say to the parents of a hypothetical 22-year-old Korean-American student who say very quietly behind closed doors, look, hypothetical student, you went to Harvard, you're too valuable for military service. Let some high school dropout like Congressman Rangel fight on the front line. We left Korea so you didn't have to join the military. We left Korea so you could go to a good school like this, get a cushy job, go to medical school and live a comfortable life. How would you counter this very elitist count?
You tell your mother.
It's for my friend.
That Congressman Rangel has said that he has been in parts of North Korea that she has never been in her life. That I have been north of Pyongyang, north of the communist capital, and I went over there to fight the communists so that her son could go to Harvard.
Gentleman right here.
Good evening, Congressman. My name is Clarence Morris. I have a radio talk show host also here in Boston. I want to ask a question. I come from a rough neighborhood over in Boston, Dorchester. The thing is, if you perceive an imminent threat, then why do you wait around and try to get world opinion as we're doing now? And if we perceive an imminent threat, such as what Colin Powell has stated with biological warfare, the pictures, telephone conversations and such, why are we waiting around to do anything? And what is the holdup? I understand what you're saying, that you don't believe it is, but how much evidence does it take for us to believe that there might be more than general opinion?
I'm from a rough neighborhood. If you say that someone hurt somebody's sister on the block.
Right, that if I was perceiving that somebody was a threat to me, instead of waiting
Well,
until
I
they
mean,
became a bigger threat,
So which block
I would think
you,
about doing them first.
But which block would you go into? I mean, I don't know what kind of neighborhood you come from, but I mean, if someone said, someone that looked like this guy who hurt your sister
Right.
lives in a block, on 25th Street. Let's go do him in to send a message to everyone in that block. Then someone says, well, there's another threat to the United States. What kind of evidence? Coming from a rough neighborhood doesn't mean we don't have morality.
Well, I'm not talking about morality, I'm talking about imminent threat.
Well, what evidence would you need before you go hurt somebody because you're afraid of what they might do to you? What kind of evidence would you need?
The evidence I would need would to feel threatened. If
Good
I
for
felt
you.
threatened.
Great, that's it. I'm not here to convince people who feel threatened, because if I hurt everybody that I feel threatened by, that'd be my whole life, my whole reason for being. I mean, you cannot bomb people senseless because you feel threatened. You can't do it. You're not going to tell me that you're going to feel better because we are prepared to blanket bomb Iraq because we feel threatened by this little demon Saddam Hussein. You're not going to tell me that you are prepared, coming from a rough neighborhood and knowing how rough neighborhoods have been mistreated by the police and other people who feel threatened, that you're prepared to take collateral damages and let babies and old people and civilians die because Colin Powell convinced you that he saw some tire tracks, and photos. I'm not going to say it, but I'll tell you one thing. If I was a talk show host and wanted to get some action going, I think I'd follow and pursue your argument a little further. It's provocative.
Well, I wouldn't do that for provocation.
Well, you wouldn't volunteer to go over there either for provocative persons. If they sent you, well, that's why I'm here.
This gentleman right up here.
Hi, Congressman Rangel. My name is Jonathan Chavez, and I'm a sophomore in the college. And first off, I just want to thank you for coming here to the forum and speak.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
I'm very struck by the word sacrifice that you're using here in your speech and the title of it. And I'm willing to grant you and agree with you that we have a shared sacrifice to our nation in these times. My question, though, is how does Congress and how does the administration, how are they able to determine what my sacrifice should be better than I am? To me, it seems as though your draft measure is more of putting a Band-Aid on a vicious cycle problem that we have in American politics, where youth aren't voting because we feel that Congress isn't listening to us. Congress doesn't listen to us because we don't vote. How does your draft solve this problem?
It really doesn't. It does focus attention on what we do in the Congress, what the president does. It allows you to be more focused. And also, it creates a debate as to what is sacrifice, not only in terms of being placed in harm's way, but also in terms of who pays for the war. How long do we stay there in the war? Is this a time basically to say that we can go into a $1.3 trillion indebtedness to wipe out the Social Security Trust Fund, to wipe out Medicare? That is sacrifice. And it just seems to me that the Congress will be always making decisions to help and to hurt people, and you have to have more people participating. To be perfectly honest with you, when 218 of the 435 people get together, they want less sacrifice for their constituents within their congressional district. And I tell you this too, in a very honest and candid way. The only way that you will be able to really convince a politician or member of Congress is to convince either you can help them and support them, or you can hurt them for differing and not understand what you consider to be sacrifice. You really got to participate in order to say that, hey, I tried to convince them, I think that they were wrong. And that's what I do each and every day. It's not that I desert the president if I lose this debate, but more people should be participating in this debate and asking the question, what do you mean by sacrifice? I might hurriedly add, it wasn't my expression, it was President Bush's expression of shared sacrifice.
Okay, we're going to take 1, 2, 3. So this, I can't see you too well.
Right, here.
Okay.
Hi, my name is Heidi Brooks. I'm a second year at Harvard Business School. And Congressman Rangel, thank you for coming, and I appreciate this debate that you're raising with this notion of sacrifice and reinstating the draft. My question for you is whether or not you consider some kind of social service as an equivalent of the draft. For example, it seems to me that there are some real financial issues and probably capacity issues in terms of having all 18 to 26-year-olds serve 2 or more years in the military. And I was wondering if you'd also consider kind of domestic service or even Peace Corps type service as a way of instilling a certain national sense, some kind of common experience that all Americans share.
This is the way I look at it. Everybody universally is subject to the draft and subject to serve in the United States military. Having said that, by the time, if this ever happens and you go home with your calculators, you got to say, there's no way in the hell for everybody who's subject to the draft to serve in the military, even if we became the international military. It means, though, you're not excluded from serving. And so whether we have a lottery with everyone being in that lottery, you will find out at the end of the day that very, very few people out of the universal pool would be assigned to the military. And then after that is concluded, we get to your question. The answer is yes. There's a lot of ways to serve this great nation, and not all of them are in the military. In education, in medicine, in social work, in just being there for somebody. We have a nurses crisis, a hospital crisis, our schools are in crisis. We need a lot of people, men and women that are not necessarily in the military, to get us through this period that we're going through. So there would be a great opportunity, of course, for those who want to volunteer to serve in the military. The opportunity would be there too.
Okay, you, and that will be it, yes.
My name is Luke Appling. I am a freshman in the college, and I'm from Texas. I share your concern about the shared sacrifices many other people do. I really have, I suppose, 2 main theoretical problems that I would have with relying more heavily on draftees than as we currently do with the enlisted men and women. I feel that they would be more likely to make 2 errors. One, if they're involved in some sort of more intense combat, including urban combat, which I think is going to be more likely in the future, that they would be more likely to, slip up, produce casualties on the other side, specifically civilians, and that also as a result of their smaller amount of training, they'd be more likely to die themselves in combat as a result of their smaller amount of training. And I was wondering if you think that the professionalism that comes with an enlisted army would still be able to be maintained if we relied more heavily on draftees.
No, I think that Rumsfeld reversed himself on the fact that draftees cannot be trained to be as effective as career professional soldiers. There's no question about it. I think the commander raised a very serious question, that is that there's just some type of training that's necessary that a draftee that didn't have a sufficient training cannot do. But believe me, urban fighting ain't one of them.
Remember the Hessians.
So no, we have to have confidence that a civilian army can be just as well trained as a professional army.
Yes, ma'am.
Hi, my name's Kate Widland from Albuquerque, New Mexico. I'm a junior at the college. My boyfriend just became the first Harvard College student to deploy in the war, and since that happened, I've been explaining to a lot of people what the reserves are, and we're, Harvard students, we know we're the brightest. And I've had conversations with people where I said that most of the people in his basic training class had never been in a swimming pool, and they laughed at me and said, Kate, we live in America. Everyone's been in a swimming pool. So I guess my question is, in addition to your bill or in place of it if it doesn't work out, what needs to happen so that people in privilege will appreciate and know who's out there fighting for them?
Whether we have a bill or not, the needs of, first, the easy part, the needs of Homeland Security can drive us deeper in debt if we're going to be hiring career people with pension benefits throughout these United States to have us to feel secure with all these multicolor warnings that we've been getting. But more importantly, and there'll be more coming out on this from Republican and Democrats, that we are exhausting our reservists. We are disrupting those who said, if we have a national emergency, count on me, but don't count just on me. And so, without a draft bill, we're going to have to find a way. How do we increase our active people? How do we increase the reservists? The way they've used in the past with a limited amount of success is not patriotism, because recruitments have not gone up as a result of let's fight and salute the flag. Recruitments, when they get low, we get more money, as the gentleman said. You know, what about the rural people in Alabama? We need the money. And so you increase the money. And that's not the way to go. So we're going to have to find a more equitable way, as long as we take the position that we have 30,000 troops in Korea, we have about 20,000 in Afghanistan. They say it's going to take from 50 to 300,000 troops in Iraq. We called up 250,000 reservists. It won't be Wrangell that they're kicking around. The families and the friends of those people who are calling up are going to say, I don't mind serving, but for God's sake, don't let it be alone. Don't tell me that I want to do it alone. And so therefore, some type of an equitable system has to be brought up with. And if you take a look on the website, you'll find a lot of Republican and Democratic bills that talk about the universal draft. They just don't believe that this is the time to be talking about it. But the concept is not a new concept.
Can I ask just one final question? And you've answered this in your own way, but since I served with you in the House, if the sons and daughters of congressmen and executive branch people were on the line to be called up, do you think the debate today would be significantly different than it is right now?
I may not be right, but there's no question in my mind that every time this comes up, I cannot but help think of my son, the lawyer, the Marine that's in the reserve. I don't know why my heart keeps going to this rascal. He enlisted, and I keep thinking about him. It just seemed to me that the natural thing would be someone at a pre-meeting here said there was some statistic that said that a poll had been taken and 60% of parents with kids between the age of 80 and 26 would support their sons fighting this war. I said, for God's sake, write your parents right away, because they don't love you anymore. You know, but the fact is that no parent challenges when they think our country's endangered. We never had this kind of talk in World War II. You know, you don't want your kid to go. You don't want him in harm's way. You don't want him in the military. But you bet your life you take a deep breath. I always ask the question, are they really talking about the French Foreign Legion when they say we have to go in and we have to take them out, we have to teach them a lesson, we should have really taught those people in North Korea, and we have to get to the Iranians as well? Where does all of this insanity end if we are just a small group of people who volunteered, as the gentleman from Alabama said, because they needed a job? And so the pain is going to be felt more and more by those people who have already said they're prepared to serve. And this is not a debate between me and you. This is a discussion, Dan, to find out, where do we go? We don't have to have it clear in our minds. But one thing, we cannot sit out this dance and believe that we can always say support the war. Let's teach them a lesson. We're being threatened. We saw the photos now more than ever. Because what happened after Collins Powell's presentation? Those that supported the war believed more than ever that we should fight. And those of us who opposed the war said there was no information given that we hadn't heard before. And so this is not an easy thing. Your nation is in trouble. We just cannot identify with any degree of accuracy how we can end a threat with one war and one strike. Let me thank all of you for giving me the opportunity not to be right, not to come up with answers, but to make certain that I could share with you my views, which are shared by so many others. And I do hope that this is just the beginning of the debate, because at the end of the day, we're not Democrats and Republicans. This is a great country, and nobody can say that if they believed that she was in jeopardy, that somehow we wouldn't say, how can we help? I guess that's the way sacrifice is. Sacrifice is being able to say, now what can I do to help to protect this great country? And I believe at 73 years old, there's still something more that I could do to be able to say at the end of the day, when my country was in trouble, I was there for her. God bless.